I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates, Mina Kimes.
All right, so first play we're going to look at 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media, back with an sort of emergency edition of the Patriots Daily Podcast, powered by Prize Picks and Game Time. And it's going to be a quick hitter here before we get into our true film breakdowns over the next couple of days. Taylor's been sifting through the film, and we've been sort of setting up our storylines for that and what we're going to get into. But we had to react to some Jerod Mayo comments from this morning, both in his post-game next day press conference, as well as some things he said on WEEI's The Greg Hill Show. And it all sort of centers around this soft football team comment that he made on Sunday after the game. And now we've talked about it, and it's sort of been the discussion on Twitter and really everywhere covering the Patriots right now. And it's Jerod Mayo sort of walking back these comments. And I think we're going to get right into it, Taylor. And that's kind of where I sit. And it's this uncomfortable feeling that he says all these things and then obviously also feels like he has to walk them back. And he mentioned this morning that we don't have a soft football team. This is from the Greg Hill Show. He says, we don't have a soft football team. We're playing soft. And he said the same thing in his press conference with the media, that we're playing soft at the moment. And now I kind of want to get your thoughts on it, but really my whole thing is it's the continuous walking back these things that makes me so, I guess, against this, right? And it was the quarterbacks where he announced Jacoby Brissett as the starting quarterback earlier, right before the season started. And he told us and he told the media after he told the players. And now, granted, it got leaked to Schefter and Rappaport just before we were there. And everyone was upset about that, and that was understandable. But at least he told the players first, because that was his whole thing. I want the team to know before it gets out there. And then 6 weeks later, when Drake May becomes the starting quarterback, it gets out through the media before he tells the team. And he's like, well, that's just what happens. It's the social media era and things happen.
He did tell the quarterbacks.
He did tell the quarterbacks, and that's fair too. But before, he said, I want to tell the whole team. I want to tell them as a unit before it gets out. And so it's just like, that was sort of hypocritical. And then he also had to, when he even talked about telling the quarterbacks, he said that he said it on Monday and it was actually on Tuesday, and he had to readjust that. And then it's just, again, it's all these little things that turn into these major things, right? And we wouldn't even be talking about this, Taylor, if they weren't 1-6, but that's the fact of the matter. And so it was, and I wrote about it a little bit this morning on CLNSmedia.com, and I tweeted it this way, where this new regime of Elliott Wolf, Jerod Mayo, and Elliott Wolf saying, we want to have less of a hard-ass vibe, and now it turns into we're a soft football team. It's like, it was refreshing to start, players opening up more, coaches saying more, and it felt more, I don't want to say fun, because that sounds so like la-di-da, and I don't mean it like that, but it felt less like we were covering the government and the Pentagon, and more like, oh, okay, this is just a football team. But now it's starting to get messy, and we'll talk about it. Players are speaking out. There's sort of this accountability issue going on with the Patriots. But first and foremost, Taylor, I just want to get your thoughts on Mayo's comments about being soft and then sort of walking them back this morning.
So
your favorite, by the way, getting into the speculatory stuff and all of the media buzz. So I want to get your thoughts.
So I want to say, bottom line, like, you are right. The losing is why this is happening. And obviously the losing falls on coaching, because you are in charge of the football team. Now, I'm trying to practice patience, because this is a guy who's still, I think, trying to find his identity as a coach, first of all. And I think we'll touch on that a little more later.
Yeah.
But like, you are coming to one of the most heavily scrutinized organizations and markets on the planet, where every single mistake you make is going to be completely picked apart and dissected. And the media is like, hey, you're doing it. But it's like, yes, but we also choose to cover it. And of course, like, it's still news when the head coach is sending one message and then actually conveying another through his actions. Now, I also think that Mayo, in trying to find his identity as a coach, is struggling to find the line of, how do I be myself and be gregarious and sometimes just shoot from the hip, which is how we know he is as a person. And everyone says, like, we all love Mayo. Mayo's a decent human being. It's not like the way where other Belichick disciples, it seems like their ego is taken over.
And they try and be Bill Belichick.
Exactly. And maybe he's trying to go too far away from that, where he doesn't want to be a failure the way those other guys were. And I think that's why he's trying to put more ownership among the players. And I still think he's being tough. Like, I think that all these Belichick disciples have tried to be tough. I think very few of them have the credibility to do so like Mayo, where he's coached the defense. He played on the defense, was a captain when they were playing well, was respected by legends and young players alike. Like, he has the credibility to be like, yeah, we're going to run. We're going to run like crazy, and I'm going to tell you you're soft to your face. And that's another big thing.
And because I got this and I went through this and I know that it works and it can be successful. So I have the credibility to be able to do this.
100%. And also, I think a big part of this is that Drake May told us when he was asked about the soft comments, he said, there's nothing that Mayo was telling you guys that he's not telling us. Now, you can point to instances like Jalen Polk, where he said that Jalen Polk had a mental hurdle. Then Jalen Polk goes, I'm not having mental problems. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And then that goes the direction it goes in. But there's also times where, yeah, Mayo's answering a question. Like, I'm sure he gets some level of prep before these interviews, but you can't prepare for everything. So sometimes I think he genuinely does get caught off guard, tries to give the best answer he can. And how often do we hear the guy have to self-correct himself, where he'll answer a question, then when someone has a follow-up, he'll have to, before that person or while they're speaking, he'll cut them off politely and be like, I'm sorry, let me add this context.
Right.
Because this is clearly new for him. And again, if they were winning, we would have more patience for that, where it's like, hey, he's going to slip up. Oh, it's so funny, silly Mayo.
Because we're 4-2 and we're the 7th seed. Right.
Exactly. And that's the bottom line, because that does fall on coaching. Now, I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think part of the issue has been that, yes, you are Jerod Mayo. You are a captain. You are the rah-rah guy. Like, you are someone who has been on the sideline and been on the field and been like, guys, this isn't good enough. We need to get our shit together. And now it feels like he's removed himself because, I'm not always watching him on the sideline. Game day, there's a million things to look at. It's kind of tough to always be locked into what the head coach is doing. But on the broadcast, it really did stand out to me. And I don't like to be hypercritical, especially when they're just showing us snippets. But typically, if the head coach is going to go over and try to hype up the team or get them locked in, the broadcast team will go over and record it, because obviously it's good content. And they usually want to have the sideline reporter be able to explain what was said because they have that access. We haven't gotten that from Mayo at all. It really does feel like he's pretty detached. And then when we've actually heard that he decided that he was going to kind of get involved, it was after the Eagles joint practice, where he was like, we weren't good enough. There were too many penalties, and the penalties went away. So I really think there's a lack of maybe taking charge really with the players hands on. And he says, hey, I have this open door policy. Sometimes players aren't going to go to you. Sometimes I think you need to be maybe not the aggressor, but the initiator, and be the one who says, hey, we need to do X, Y, Z. This needs to improve. That needs to improve, because DeMarcus Covington has respect, especially from the defensive line, because he coached them. But still, he's not the one who was leading the defensive meetings for years. Stephen Belichick was huge, but he was more the play caller. Mayo was the guy who everyone talked about how he always put the game in a certain perspective and allowed you to just be a better version of yourself because you really got to see the big picture. I don't know how often he's able to play to his strengths because of whatever role he's decided to take, where he's more of the CEO, where he facilitates and, and he's bouncing around. Like, bro, do you really need to be?
And he's basically like, he's in the headset. He's talking to Van Pelt on one channel and Covington on the other. And he's, I guess, above them. I don't mean it as though he's better than them or in that context, but he's letting them do their thing. But at the same time, he's also like almost not giving any advisory counsel or nothing. He's just saying, I put this off to them. I put this off to him. I'm the head coach, and that's all I am. And when you're a good defensive coach and a good defensive mind and have played the game and seen it, you should be more hands-on. And he hasn't been doing that right now.
And I appreciate the humility of him removing himself from situations where he doesn't really know what he's talking about. Like the quarterback situation.
The offense.
Mainly, so much crap because people kind of insinuate, and he took ownership and said, I make the final decision. And that makes sense. But when it came to the QB development, I understood him being more hands-off because he doesn't know how to develop a quarterback. When it gets to the point where you think you could lose the locker room because you're just not competitive and you're just on a train that's just off the tracks, then yes, as a head coach, that's when you should step in. Same thing with the penalties and the lack of discipline. But the run game needs to improve, obviously. But the offense is not the problem right now because you should be a defensive-led team, but your defense and the strengths of your defense in previous years, like run defense, are the areas where you're struggling the most. And now you have a game where even your good players like Devon Godshaw are the ones who are struggling. And, Jaquelin Roy's trying his best. I don't even want to say that. I feel like that kind of sounds condescending. Right. But he's supposed to prepare like a starter, but he is a backup. Mm-hmm. And if this is a season where you have Barmore and you have Bentley, these issues are not going to be as prominent. I really just don't believe that because of what their roles were and what the impact was that they brought last season. Even with Bentley, he was in and out of the lineup, but still having someone like Barmore and Godshaw and then name whoever in the middle, like when one guy slipped, those guys were good enough to pick everybody else up. Now it doesn't feel like you have enough players who can overcome the deficiencies around them. But whether that's effort and execution, if they're not where they're supposed to be, like Mayo mentioned, or if it's not the X's and O's, it's execution, you need to be as involved as possible, because if you are the head coach and you are allowing it to happen, or it is happening and you're not stopping it, you're allowing it. So I understand the criticism, and I get, how sometimes he doesn't phrase things correctly. There is a difference between calling your team soft and saying you are playing soft. And I don't think, I did not interpret it, and I get how people did, but I did not interpret that as him being like, these players are soft, because clearly not all of them are. Like Kyle Duggar was clearly trying. He was one of the few guys, him, Daniel Aquale, like Anthony Jennings, those dudes showed up yesterday, and they were trying, and you got the secondary for the most part, they're doing their jobs. Like there were a couple busted coverages we'll talk about later today, but that wasn't the glaring issue. It's like you were getting run on, and you couldn't get off the field. You got some stops. You didn't let them in the end zone for most of the second half until the end there, but you still couldn't get off the field when you had a deficit that you needed to overcome. That's the story. So again, that's why this all matters, because once the execution gets better, people aren't going to harp on every little thing you say, because they're going to want to put the good things in focus, because that's what we all want. We all want the progress. We all want to be able to praise Drake May and be like, hey, the defense is doing their job. This is what we expected. But they are shockingly not meeting expectations outside of their rookie quarterback. And that's just the crux of it. It doesn't matter what you say. Prove it on the field, and you don't have to worry about it.
Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 players or more for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Again, you win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the best place to get real money sports action. 10 million users are on it. You should join them today. Right now, too, Prize Picks is running an Anthony Edwards free square that has to do with his opening night game with Minnesota. All he has to do is score more than half a point, and you win that segment of your lineup. So make sure everything you play on Prize Picks, you are adding that Anthony Edwards square. It is free, and all he has to do is score more than half a point. Head over to Prize Picks today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. It's wild how fast it flipped from the offense is terrible and the protection's terrible and the quarterback play stinks to, oh, Drake May only got sacked once yesterday, and he looks like one of the best young quarterbacks in football, but the defense 2 straight weeks is getting gashed in the run game, lets up 41 and then 32 in consecutive weeks, and now all of a sudden that's the focus. And I think that's I like that it seems like they have the quarterback and that now they just have to put all the pieces around him. Now that takes a lot, and we'll get to that not only today, but through the rest of the week and through the rest of the season and into the offseason, what they have to do to continue building this thing. But we'll stay on the messaging piece for a second here. You have something?
Actually, just one more thing, because this is what I asked Mayo during today's presser. I asked about the penalties and the lack of discipline, and the fact that a lot of that is coming from veteran players. Like DeMontre Jacobs has been penalized 3 weeks in a row. Young guy, he's in a tough spot, still not acceptable, especially when it's your second week in a row with a false start penalty, and one of them was at home. Like if it's one thing, no one talks about it, but then when it becomes a pattern, you have to acknowledge it. But we're talking about Mike Nwenu committing a false start, Hunter Henry committing his second false start in a critical situation in 3 weeks. Dietrich Wise being someone who goes up in front of us and tells us about how they need to be more disciplined and how it's a lack of focus or, emotions or what have you. And 2 weeks ago, he has a penalty, lines up off sides, and then wipes away, it gets bailed out. That wipes away a third down stop. And this week, you completely lose track of the quarterback, literally ends up standing up, looking around, and Trevor Lawrence is broken the pocket. And after the play, Daniel Aquale is like, what are we doing? And Daniel Aquale was one of the guys after this game who called people out and was saying, some people need to check their egos at the door. And we talk to Dietrich Wise every week. I don't think he's got an ego, but you've also got guys like Devon Godshaw, like to the same vein, where Godshaw is the one who for weeks has been talking about guys being selfish and not doing their jobs. And he was getting run on yesterday. And at some point I get like, you're going to have bad weeks. I'm not saying that Godshaw's a hypocrite or anything, but and Jerod Mayo said it stinks when it's any player who's committing these penalties, and he didn't really make it seem like it's specific to his veterans. But come on, man. We're talking about guys that you re-signed in the offseason, guys that you're calling captains, who are some of the guys who are committing penalties consistently or putting them in bad spots. So for me, that's another really bad sign for the coaching is I don't know what you do. And I said it last night with Zanis, but like I am hesitant to criticize coaching because I don't always know what they go through. Like I'm the X's and O's guy. I watch the tape. I've never been a coach. I've never been on a coaching staff. I've been on in a scouting department, like they're very different things. So
it's two different wings of the building for sure.
Right. And I try to learn as I go. And if I don't know where exactly the problem is, obviously you want to say coaching, but I'm not going to put that out there if I can't.
What is the coaching point? Right. It's clear that there's a disconnect with coaching right now. It's hard to determine exactly what it is, and not being in the room and understanding what the coaching point is on this certain play versus this certain play. It's difficult to kind of figure out what exactly is going on.
And I know we get paid to have opinions. I just don't want to put my foot in my mouth and go out there and saying stuff, and I don't know what I'm talking about. But again,
like Jerod Mayo putting your foot in your mouth.
I mean, yes, but I'm more media trained, to be fair. I've been in media a little longer than he has. But, at the end of it, I keep getting called like a Mayo shill. And I guess part of that is why I feel like I'm really defensive right now. But I am not okay with this. Like, I grew up for like half my life, but I grew up watching the Patriots, and that's why I have the job I have now. I want to see them do well. You guys think it's fun covering a team that's struggling? Like, it's literally my job to tell you why a team that I grew up rooting for sucks right now. It's not fun.
It's not.
But I think we also need to have some level of a measured approach while also being critical when we need to be. And I don't think that we have been, there's been a lack of criticism towards Mayo on this pod.
No.
I just think there hasn't been as much of a ringing the pans.
We're not jumping to conclusions right away on it. Let's sort of let it play out and give it some time. And I think you tweeted it last night, which is, I guess it's obviously the ceiling of where this can turn. And it's the Detroit Lions where they started and they sucked, right? And they started 0 whatever. And Jared Goff looked like a shell.
And then they got out of line. I think they tied with something like that.
And then all of a sudden they started the following season 0-6, and one of those games was against the Patriots. And then all of a sudden they turned it around and they were in week 17 and almost made the playoffs. And so this can turn around. And I think right now it is 1-6, and there's such a complete 180 from the Belichick era where it was don't tell them anything, only speak for yourself. And they've completely gone away from that. And it's we're going to tell you everything, and we're not just going to speak for ourselves. We're going to call out our teammates and say, no, this is happening. We need to fix this. It's not just I'm not doing my job. It's everybody else isn't doing their job. And that's not only a Patriots thing, right? Other teams do this, and other successful teams do this. And there's different ways to, skin a cat, right? And I think with these soft comments in particular, I do appreciate that Drake May and KJ Osborne both said that he's not telling you guys anything he hasn't said to us. And I do believe he went into the locker room and said, we need to run the damn football. We need to stop the damn run, and we need to cover kicks. And
speaking of which, I'm sorry to cut you off, but you can
good.
find Matt Patricia clinics where he puts it up on a board because those are the fundamentals that Bill Belichick had been coaching this team for years. Those are foundational. I'm sure he got it from Parcells. Those are foundational Patriots laws. If you cannot run the ball, stop the run, and cover kicks, yes, you are not tough. And if you are not tough, you are soft. The phrasing matters, but this is not a new philosophy. They've been saying this for decades.
We are also powered by Game Time here on CLNS Media. And right now you can get into Gillette Stadium next week for Patriots versus Jets for as little as $97 right now. It's under $100 to get in to Gillette Stadium, and you can do so through the Game Time app. You go check it out today. They have super deals, amazing deals, great deals, all of it at Game Time. They also have the Game Time Picks feature that filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You can also see your seat view on the Game Time app. Not all ticketing apps do that, but you can do so with Game Time. So you click on your seat, it shows you exactly what you will see on the field. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets. with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And I think that's where phrasing matters, and it gets harped on when you're 1-6, right? And so when he goes in there and say we're playing soft football, we need to figure this out, for lack of a better term. And again, we don't know. We're not in the room. We don't know what they're saying, but he clearly told them that before he came to the podium. But then he came to the podium and said we're a soft football team, and he's in over his.
Which, again, if you want to interpret it the way that he meant it, you can, but you can also take it the other way where it sounds like you're talking shit about your team.
Right now, he's so in over his head right now, and that can change. You can learn from mistakes, and that's why it goes the same with quarterbacks in the NFL, where they come in, they stink, and you cut them and you release them and you trade them right away instead of developing them and letting them grow and learn through mistakes. And hey, we're going to change this, we're going to change that. And so we see Bill Belichick in year 25 know that everything, every time I stop, every comma, everything is going to be criticized. So I'm just not going to tell you anything. And everything I do tell you, I know exactly what I'm saying. And that's why I only speak for myself. And right now, they're changing that. And for better or for worse, it's not going the way they planned because they're 1-6. And so I'm with you. It's messy. It's ugly. But I'm not one of the people that's going to say, hey, you need to fire this guy instantly. Like, things can there are people literally calling for this guy's job right now. And Robert Kraft always says, measure 9 times, cut once. He's not going to cut bait with Jerod Mayo after this season, whether you think he should or shouldn't. We're going to see this at least for another season, maybe another 2, and he's going to let him grow and develop in this role.
Yes.
And for better or worse, that's what's going to happen.
So I have a few things to touch on here.
Yeah.
Because one, the using the media to send a message is not new against the Patriots. Belichick did it, and I'm sure at least partially he did it because Parcells did it. Parcells was open about it. Bill, not so much, although it was pretty obvious.
Yep.
Now Mayo's doing it, but he's being very transparent about it, which is jarring because it's like, whoa, okay, you're just going to say it? Like, that's very meta of you. But everything you're saying where he's young and he needs time, that all sounds like Mayo's comments about Jalen Polk. What he's saying right now, where he's got the mental hurdles, but, Alex Van Pelt said success will fix everything. Mm-hmm. And Polk just needs to figure it out. Eventually, the light bulb's going to click. I know I saw some video. I wish I'd actually watch it. I just saw it when I was scrolling about why that's actually not a good thing to tell athletes, that eventually the light bulb will click, because I think it sets a bad expectation. But I think
it's just going to happen and they don't have to work for it type of thing.
Maybe not even necessarily that, but like if you do work for it and you still don't get it, it may be like, well, instead of trying to find other avenues, you just think something's wrong with you. Fair. And again, I haven't watched the video. I should look it up and try to figure that out. But the point is, he's in a similar situation to Polk, where he keeps saying Polk has a bright future. He's just got to figure it out. Mm-hmm. Does that sound familiar? It's like what we're hoping happens with Mayo, where he is hoping to turn it around. He knows that, like you said, he's in over his head, whether he acknowledges it or not. No one could have predicted what's gone on with the team so far, from the injuries to trading Judon to just the Jabril Pepper situation, like everything that has been thrown on his plate, on top of the fact that he already took over for the most successful coach that the NFL has ever seen. And I know he's not doing a great job right now because they're not winning and he's not handling the media stuff well. But like you said, we need to let this guy grow. And to be fair, at least the coaching staff is making changes. The guys who we called out, we literally said last week, well, the shakeup's coming. Who's going to play more? Who's going to play less? We called out Raekwon McMillan. We called Keon White on early down, specifically with them putting like beefier guys in there. Right. So Wise and White didn't have to constantly be on the interior. What did we see? Christian Ellis, a starter, much less Raekwon McMillan. Keon White, a lot of the game, and Dietrich Wise were replaced by Daniel Equale. Like, Eric Johnson was in there. He didn't play particularly well. I think maybe Jeremiah Farms wasn't playing up to their standard, and that's another guy that they had as a healthy scratch, at least as far as we know. But, I mean, they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to see what lineup works best and which guys are trying to go out there and compete. It's just, when things are bad like this and you're 1-6, it's because things are bad all over the place. And it's not one guy. It's not even sometimes two guys. It's like you have problems. And they don't have a lot of resources to fix them either. So I do want to give the coaching staff some credit because they're trying to figure out the permutations that work on offense and defense. But obviously, like at some point, you need the results to shine through just to get the people off your back. Because, like you said, Dan Campbell was 0-10 before his bye, or whatever it was that they started.
And every single time the Lions lose, people are like, "Is Dan Campbell actually not a good coach? Is he just a rah-rah guy?" So, like, anytime you lose, this is going to happen. And I want to pivot that into our final point, Taylor, before we finish this up. And it's yes, Mayo uses the media for messaging, and he's letting it be known. His players are also doing that. And this is new, right? Godshaw's calling out people. We talked about it a little bit. Aquale's calling out people. Kendrick Bourne as well yesterday said the same thing. And then you have the wide receiver room, Jalen Polk with the peace sign, KJ Osborne posting the conversation with his friend about how he was supposedly going to be inactive on, or he was
so
told that he was
weird that the guys that you thought were going to be the high character guys, not that I'm calling them bad people or anything,
right?
But like Polk and Osborne, like KB, I could kind of see that because he sees himself as a team leader and the team has called him a leader. But like, I did not expect this kind of stuff from Polk and KJ Osborne.
Neither did I, and it's so much different compared to what we've seen here in the past. And the pointing fingers isn't going to go all that far. And I get Mayo says like you're going to challenge your brother and go. You tell a guy to do this and hopefully they're going to rise to the standard, but it also sometimes turns into pointing fingers and everyone say, well, why are you posting this? Why don't you just keep your mouth shut and just work and blah, blah, blah. And so I wonder, yes, I'm not happy with the way Mayo is handling things right now. I think he's in over his head. I do want to give him the benefit of the doubt and allow him to learn and grow through it. But at the same time, you're 1-6. You have all this noise on the outside. How fast do you lose a locker room? And how fast does it completely unravel and you don't end up having a chance to save yourself because guys in the room are so upset and it's just turning into this nagging, aching, painful losing season? And Mayo said he's not worried about it. He said he was asked about it yesterday. He said, I'm not worried about losing the room. The guys understand every week's his own week. We have to turn the page. And that all sounds all well and good. I just wonder at what point does it become, okay, we need to just keep our mouth shut and turn back the page in this sort of attitude towards the media and go back to what it was like beforehand.
I mean, he said also, like, you got to go through hell to get to heaven and all that stuff. Like, do you also want them to completely pivot? And I understand, like, changes need to be made. I'm not insinuating that they need to just stay on course because clearly, but they're also, like I said, they're trying to do it in terms of the roster. I don't know what they're doing behind the scenes, but it sounds like the fast start periods were something that they kind of introduced relatively recently because they weren't starting off fast. And like, another frustrating thing, that worked. And then the opposite happened where, not the opposite because they've been pretty bad in the middle of games too, but they had the fast start and then just completely like fell off the face of the earth.
It felt so good. It was like, oh, wow, fast start period. Get off to it. 10-0. Let's go. And then boom, 22 points in the second quarter.
And I think it's just the kind of thing that's going to take tweaking. And I don't think that huge wholesale decision-making and a change in philosophy is necessarily the move. I think that's where you're admitting that you're panicking. Mm-hmm. And I think as much crap as he's getting now, it can always be worse. And if he decides that he's going to just try to become Bill and not tell us anything, he's going to get crap for that.
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
It's for winning. Just prove it on the field, and then no one's going to care what you say. And then you can go back to being gregarious, Jerod that everybody loves and no one wants to critique because the results are there and everyone can just enjoy that, you're having success in an area that hasn't had it in a while. And you're a nice guy who, was raised as a player and a coach here and all that. Like that storyline becomes awesome. But, I said it to you guys earlier, and it's a saying that, has been going around the NFL for a while. The same reason they hire you is the same thing that's going to get you fired. So, we loved all this after the win and everyone's rooting for Mayo. And now very quickly, because you have a 6-game losing streak, people aren't really, people don't think it's cute anymore.
Right.
And winning is the only thing that's going to fix that. We'll see how they try to get that done.
Winning changes everything, Taylor Kyles, and it may take some time. We've seen the good example, like I mentioned, the Lions, hope and pray that it turns into Detroit and not like some other messes we've seen around the NFL. But it's a process, and we'll see how it plays out. Me and Taylor will be back here on Pat's Daily, breaking down Patriots versus Jaguars in the film room. So make sure you keep it here, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel, like this video, and keep tabs on us as we continue through this trying Patriots season. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everyone.